The Darkest Appalachians, the macabre history of the Hannon family. Before we dive into today's chilling tale from the Darkest Appalachians, pause for a second. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Texas at dusk? Your answers make us feel like one big fireside circle. Hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss the next macabre chapter. Let's keep this mountain fog rolling together. In the autumn of 1892, the dense hollers of Black Hollow, West Virginia, lay shrouded under a perpetual veil of mist that clung to the Appalachian peaks like a living thing. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp pine needles and decaying leaves, while a chill wind carried faint, eerie whispers through the skeletal branches of ancient oaks that twisted skyward like gnarled fingers. Black Hollow wasn't marked on any map, a forgotten crease in the rugged mountains, where the railroad tracks from nearby Welch ended abruptly in a tangle of rusted iron and overgrown kudzu. Coal miners from the surrounding camps spoke of it in hushed tones, crossing themselves before dusk. For the sun seemed to bleed out early here, leaving the valleys drowned in shadow hours before nightfall. Ezekiel Hannon, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a beard streaked in premature grey and eyes that gleamed like polished flint, stood at the center of this isolated world. He led his family of 9 with the unyielding authority of a patriarch forged by generations of hardship. His wife, Lila, was a wiry woman of 42, her hands calloused from decades of labor, her face etched with lines that spoke of silent endurance. She tended the hearth in their ramshackle cabin, perched precariously on the edge of a sheer ravine that plunged hundreds of feet into a foaming creek below. The structure was a patchwork of weathered logs and salvaged tin, its chimney belching smoke that mingled with the ever-present fog. Their 7 children ranged from Caleb, the lanky 19-year-old eldest with a perpetual scowl, to little Tommy, a wide-eyed 12-year-old whose freckled cheeks still held the softness of innocence. Each dawn, the family scattered into the woods like shadows, returning with hauls that defied the lean season. Deer haunches too plump for fall, rabbits skinned with unnatural precision, and bushels of wild mushrooms that no one else dared harvest. Neighbors in the nearest settlement of Piney Grove, a dismal cluster of sagging porches, a one-room general store lit by flickering kerosene lamps, and a tavern reeking of moonshine, whispered of the Hannons' unnatural fortune. "Them Hannons got the devil's own luck," Old Man Harlan would rasp over his chipped mug at the bar, his trembling fingers spilling droplets onto the scarred counter. Livestock vanished from pastures overnight. Cows found gutted clean as a butcher's slab, chickens plucked bare without a feather astray. Yet the Hannons' smokehouse groaned under the weight of salted meat, which they traded for flour, salt, and calico at premium prices. The Hannons traced their bloodline to Scots-Irish settlers who had intermarried with remnant Cherokee families generations back, creating a lineage as insular and resilient as the mountains themselves. They shunned the outside world, attending neither church suppers nor mine dances, their accents thick with the rolling drawl of the hollers. Ezekiel enforced silence about their past. Questions were met with a backhand or a cold stare. Lila enforced it with prayers muttered in a tongue half Cherokee, half forgotten Gaelic, her rosary beads clicking like bones. That crisp October morning, as the first frost etched delicate crystalline patterns across the cabin's warped window panes, Tommy Hannon's curiosity ignited. He tugged at his father's sleeve while Ezekiel sharpened his hunting knife by the fire. "Pa, the boys down by the creek say there's gold in the forbidden cave, real Cherokee gold, shiny as the sun." The boy's voice bubbled with mischief, his small hands gesturing wildly toward the ridge half a mile upslope. The cave was a local taboo, its yawning mouth framed by petroglyphs faded to ghosts, swirling spirals and snarling figures that the old Cherokee storytellers called warnings from the Nunahi, mountain spirits who guarded secrets with teeth and claws. Ezekiel's jaw tightened, his calloused hand clamping onto Tommy's shoulder with a grip that made the boy wince. "Ain't no gold up there, son. Just shadows that eat little fools who poke where they don't belong." His voice was gravelly, laced with a warning deeper than fatherly concern. Lila paused in the doorway, her apron dusted with cornmeal flour from breakfast cornbread, her hollowed eyes flicking toward the ridge. She knew the cave's lore intimately, the fog-eater, a spirit that slithered through the mists, demanding tribute from intruders. But Ezekiel's reasons for forbidding it ran darker, rooted in pacts unspoken, bargains struck in desperation years before Tommy was born. Midday came with a deceptive calm. The family dispersed to chores, Caleb chopping wood with rhythmic thuds that echoed like drumbeats, Mary and the middle girls foraging berries, stained red as blood, the younger boys tending the scraggly garden of potatoes and cabbages. Tommy, entrusted with fetching water from the spring, slipped away unnoticed, his small boots crunching through the brittle underbrush toward the cave. The path wound through laurel thickets that clawed at his trousers, the air growing colder, thicker, as if the mountain exhaled suspicion. Supper found an empty place at the rough-hewn table. Lila's cornbread sat untouched by Tommy's spot, her spoon stirring the bean pot mechanically. "Boy's late," she murmured, her voice tight as a bowstring. Caleb rose first, grabbing a lantern and rifle. "Can't have gone far, Ma. I'll fetch him." The search began in earnest. Lanterns bobbing through the fog-draped trees, voices calling, "Tommy! Tommy!" until throats grew raw. The ravine swallowed sound, the wind mocking their cries with its own mournful howl. Hours stretched into a black night, pierced only by stars that seemed too distant, too indifferent. Near midnight, hooves thundered up the rutted trail. Sheriff Amos Reed, a pot-bellied veteran of 30 years with a tin star pinned crookedly to his wool vest and a face weathered like old leather, dismounted with a posse of 6 grim-faced Piney Grove men, miners off shift, their hands still black with coal dust. Reed had been roused by frantic pounding on his door, his wife clutching a shawl as she thrust a lantern into his hands, muttering frantic prayers to St. Michael. "Hannon boy missing since noon," one posse man reported, breath fogging the air. "Folks saying strange lights up the ridge last night." The search party fanned out, boots sinking into mud-slick earth that sucked like quicksand. Lila hovered at the cabin's threshold, wringing her apron until her knuckles whitened, her lips moving in silent supplication. Ezekiel paced the porch like a caged wolf, his pipe smoke curling into the mist, his eyes scanning the tree line with predatory focus. Dawn crept in reluctant gray, painting the peaks in muted hues. They found the first sign at first light. Tommy's wool cap, snagged on a thorn bush 20 yards from the cave entrance. The brim was torn ragged, stained with something dark and viscous, too thick for mud, too fresh for old blood. Deeper in, the ground betrayed worse horrors. Peculiar tracks marred the soft soil. Not the small prints of a boy's scuffed boots, but elongated impressions with splayed toes, ending in claw-like gouges, as if a hulking beast had dragged its prey backward into the dark. "What in tarnation made these?" gasped Miner Elias, his torch sputtering in the damp air, casting jittery shadows on the petroglyphs. Ezekiel arrived then, striding from the trees like a specter, his face a mask of carved granite. "Bear tracks. Big old black bear, likely rabid. We'll handle it family style, Sheriff. No need for your boys to risk necks." His tone brooked no argument, his bulk filling the cave mouth. Reed's mustache twitched, unconvinced. The tracks were wrong, too deliberate, too human in their spacing. As the posse retreated down the slope, murmuring prayers and curses, the sheriff lingered, his gaze drawn to the cabin's shadowed windows where pale faces pressed against the glass, watching unblinking. That evening, as lanterns flickered to life in Piney Grove. An anonymous letter arrived at the post office, scrawled in a childish hand on butcher paper, yellowed with age. No stamp, no return address, just the faint metallic tang of fear inkling from the ink. The Hannons eat their own. Cave knows. Run while you can. It circulated through the tavern like a curse, fingers tracing the uneven letters, eyes darting toward the distant peaks. Word ignited through the hollers faster than a brush fire. Miners crossed themselves at shift change, preachers thundered brimstone sermons on demons lurking in the dark, women bolted doors before twilight. The Hannons shuttered tighter, smoke curling defiantly from their chimney. But inside the cabin that night, as thunder rumbled overhead and sheets of rain lashed the tin roof like accusatory fingers, Ezekiel gathered his family around the flickering hearth. The fire popped and spat, illuminating faces drawn taut with secrets. "The mountain tests us," he intoned, his voice low and gravelly as grinding stones. "Tommy failed the trial. Now we pay the toll." Lila wept silently into her apron, shoulders shaking. Caleb's fists clenched white-knuckled on his knees, his young face hardening into resolve. From the loft above, where the younger children huddled, a faint scratching echoed, like nails dragging slow across raw wood, patient and insistent. The fog rolled in thicker, swallowing Black Hollow whole, and somewhere in its clammy depths, amid the ancient petroglyphs, a pair of eyes gleamed with unnatural, patient hunger. 7 years earlier, in the merciless winter of 1885, a blizzard entombed Black Hollow under 10 feet of snow, transforming the Appalachian hollows into a white void where sound died and hope froze solid. Winds screamed through the narrow passes like vengeful spirits, reducing visibility to mere arm's length as Ezekiel Hannon, then a vigorous 38-year-old trapper with a frame hardened by endless toil, battled chest-deep drifts. His traps had yielded nothing for weeks. Rabbits starved, deer vanished into the storm, and back at the cabin, his family teetered on the brink of famine. Lila rationed the last crumbs of cornbread, her voice sharp as she hushed the children's whimpers beneath threadbare quilts stitched from burlap sacks. Desperation, that old mountain companion, drove Ezekiel toward the forbidden cave, a jagged scar in the ridge etched with petroglyphs that peeled like ancient skin, swirling spirals, snarling beastmen, Cherokee warnings of the Nunahai, elusive mountain spirits who hoarded wealth but devoured the unworthy. The cave's mouth swallowed him whole, the air inside shifting from biting cold to an unnatural warmth that prickled his skin like fever. His lantern's flame danced erratically, illuminating walls slick with moisture that dripped in rhythmic plops, echoing like distant heartbeats. Deeper in, a recess glowed faintly, a stone altar cradling an obsidian idol, squat and menacing, its elongated limbs carved in contorted agony, quartz eyes polished to a malevolent gleam. As Ezekiel's gloved fingers pried it free, the ground trembled subtly, and a voice, not auditory, but a vibration in his marrow, whispered promises laced with threat. "Prosperity for your bloodline, Hannon. Fresh tribute beneath the full moon's gaze, or I claim what's mine by right." Gold nuggets cascaded from concealed crevices, heavy and warm, enough to buy seed corn, iron tools, and a reprieve from starvation's jaws. He staggered home at dawn, idol tucked in his coat, snow caking his beard like hoarfrost. Lila's eyes widened at the gleam of metal, her calloused hands clutching the nuggets as if they were salvation. The idol claimed the mantle above the hearth, its quartz gaze sweeping the room. That spring defied the mountain's cruelty. Corn sprouted tall against blight, wild turkeys flocked to their snares in abundance, berries swelled fat on vines. Lila baked pies bursting with juice. The children, Caleb, a gangly boy of 12, Ruth, a solemn 10-year-old with her mother's sharp features, grew ruddy-cheeked and strong. Laughter echoed through the cabin, a rare melody in the hollers. But prosperity's shadow crept in with Ruth. She woke screaming from nightmares, sheets tangled around her sweat-slicked body, babbling of ancestral shades gathered around bone piles under moonlit peaks. "Pa, it's watching us always," she'd whisper at dawn, pointing a trembling finger at the idol, its eyes seeming to track her every flinch. Faint blue veins spider-webbed beneath her pale skin, pulsing faintly. Ezekiel dismissed it as cabin fever from the thin air. But he felt the change, too, a sharpening of senses at dusk, a hollow ache in his gut that no venison sated. The mountain's bargain gnawed at him, patient as erosion. Harvest moon brought the reckoning. Grandma Etta, Ezekiel's mother, had withered to a frail wisp, her cough rattling like dry branches in wind, lungs clogged with the black dust of decades. On the night the moon hung full and bloated, snow flurrying in fits, Ezekiel summoned the family to a hidden clearing ringed by moss-draped standing stones, remnants of Cherokee rituals long suppressed. "The mountain gives freely. We must return what it lent," he declared, his voice steady despite the tremor in his torch-lit hands. They formed a circle around Etta, who babbled incoherently on a bed of pine boughs, her rheumy eyes darting. "The old ones, coming back. Hungry." Lila began the chant, half-remembered Cherokee hymns blended with Gaelic laments her own mother had whispered, her rosary beads clicking like dice in death's game. The children clutched pokeberry-dyed wildflowers, their small faces solemn. What transpired defied nature. Etta's body arched, eyes bulging white as invisible talons raked her from within. Limbs twisted at impossible angles, bones cracking with wet snaps that echoed off the stones. Skin split in ragged fissures, steam rising in the chill. When stillness fell, no intact corpse remained, just a husk steaming on the boughs, flesh loosened from bone in ritual offering. "She nourishes us now," Ezekiel intoned, drawing his knife. They partook under the idol's distant vigil, the meat rich with iron tang and loamy earth, sliding down throats with forbidden vitality. Ruth retched into the snowdrift, bile mixing with flakes, but Caleb tore in ravenously, eyes glazing with newfound zeal. The idol warmed on the mantle that night, and dawn delivered snares heavy with prime venison. Whispers of the Hannon's reversal reached Piney Grove. Envy festered into suspicion at the tavern, where miners swapped tales over sour mash. Ruth, visions plaguing her sleep, sought solace with a passing peddler named Silas, a gaunt wanderer with a mule cart groaning under calico bolts and tin wares. At the creek, where he watered his beast, she hissed urgently, "They ain't right, mister. Pa bargained with something old as these hills. We don't hunt outsiders. Not yet." She pressed a scribbled note into his palm. "Feast soon. Run." But a rustle in the laurel sent Silas bolting, note fluttering forgotten into the current. The macabre rhythm held for years. The cabin swelled with pilfered lumber into a sturdy lair, faces rounded with unnatural health, tools gleamed sharp. Tommy's birth in 1880 heralded a fracture. The boy pale and undersized, drawn to shadows like a moth, giggling at the scratching from the walls. Ruth watched him toddle toward the cave, heart twisting. "You're marked, little brother," she murmured one twilight, as the loft's nocturnal scrapes grew deliberate, rhythmic. Back in 1892, after the sheriff's fruitless search and the letter's poison spread, the family convened by hearthfire. Lila rounded on Ezekiel, voice cracking. "This curse ends tonight, Zeke. Tommy's gone 'cause of that damned rock." He loomed over her, eyes feral in firelight. "You supped same as me, woman. Mountain chose us guardians. Ain't no quittin'." Caleb backed his father. Knife-parting venison that carried faint echoes of childish soap, portions vanishing into the night for tribute. That midnight, Ruth slipped the latch, boots muffled on wet earth, racing fog-veiled trails towards Silas's route. Branches whipped her face. The mist thickened, coiling like fingers. Rough hands seized her from behind, deformed, unyielding. "Sister!" A guttural voice rasped, laced with inhuman echo. Her scream dissolved into the void. In Piney Grove, a second letter slithered through hands. "Ruth knows the truth. They're coming for more." Spring 1900 arrived in Black Hollow with a deceptive thaw, melting snow into torrents that carved fresh scars down the ravines. But the chill of suspicion lingered in the air like coal smoke. The Hannons had grown brazen, venturing to Piney Grove for supplies amid sidelong glares and bolted doors, their wagon creaking under unexplained bounty. Nathan Cole, a sharp-featured journalist of 32 from Charleston, with ink-stained cuffs and a city-bred cynicism armored against hillbilly yarns, rode in on a borrowed mule, posing as a destitute lumberjack fleeing debts. The anonymous letters, R.H., scrawls detailing shadowed feasts and child-sized bones, had hooked him for the Gazette. Debunk the Hannon curse or unearth scandal. His satchel concealed a notebook, pencil stubs, and a Brownie camera loaded with glass plates. The mountains assaulted him from the outset. Rain-slicked trails devolved to sucking mire. Copperhead serpents slithered from crevices, fangs bared. Solitude clawed at his nerves, amplifying every rustle. Dusk found him at the cabin, a fortress now of hewn logs, iron-barred windows, chimney-belching venison-scented smoke. Ezekiel loomed in the doorway, shotgun propped casual-like, beard framing a wary squint. "State your business, outsider." Nathan spun gold, orphaned mill hand seeking honest work for board, strong back for chopping. Lila appraised him from the shadows. Ladle paused mid-stir, before nodding curtly and setting an extra plate of stew. Rich, gamey, with an undercurrent metallic tang. Immersion was a slow poison. The surviving children, teens to mid-20s, glided with predatory poise. Caleb, ox broad at 27, honing blades to razor keenness. Mary, 22, pupils eternally dilated. Ritual scars latticing her arms like lightning, humming dissonant Cherokee dirges while skinning hairs proportioned oddly human. The younger ones silent wraiths. Ruth's name evoked shrugs. Run off with a Welch miner. But her absence weighted the air like unsaid grief. Tommy remained taboo, a ghost in glances. Nathan catalogued feverishly by lantern's jitter. Nightly, loft scratching escalated to guttural murmurs, as if something paced the rafters. Too many eyes glinted from tree-lined gloam. Meals featured mountain portions, spirited outdoors at moonrise. A ferocious storm uprooted century oaks, flooded the ravine to frothing rage. Amid thunder's roar, Ezekiel shared pipe tobacco by the hearth. "This soil drinks blood for its gifts, son. Nunnehi old as creation. Demand tribute, or strip ye bare." Nathan's pulse raced. Was it metaphor? Madness? Midnight forays yielded atrocities. The root cellar, earth-floored and reeking of wet stone, hid bundles of hides imprinted with human whorls, jars of organs pickled in brine, labeled in Ruth's looping script for the fog-eater. A crude vellum map pinpointed vanishings orbiting the cave. Hastily snapped brownie shots captured blurred pallid faces in gloom. Heart-hammering, he filched a necklace of child molars strung on sinew. Storm's zenith brought reckoning. Caleb cornered him surfacing from the cellar, scarred lips curling in smile. "Snoopin' treasures, lumberjack?" The family converged, eyes luminous, Ezekiel brandishing the cracked idol, quartz pulsing faint. "Feast with us. Or become it." Nathan exploded into the gale, boots skidding on clay, lightning strobing pursuit, twisted silhouettes loping unnatural. Fog cloaked his escape. Ankle wrenched en route. He collapsed near Piney Grove's fringe. Sheriff Reed discovered him at cockcrow, raving of flesh-eaters. As posse lanterns gathered, a distant ululation pierced the mist. Familial, feral. Spring of 1900 thawed Black Hollow's iron grip reluctantly, turning snowpack into raging torrents that gouged fresh wounds down the ravines and swelled the creek to a muddy roar. Mud suckled at wagon wheels, and the air hummed with the buzz of blackflies, but a deeper chill lingered. The suspicion that had rooted in Piney Grove since Tommy's vanishing 8 years prior. The Hannons now strode into town unapologetic, their buckboard groaning under sacks of flour, bolts of cloth, and cuts of meat that drew envious snarls from starved miners. Whispers trailed them like smoke. How they thrive when rest of us scrape. Doors bolted early. Children were called in before full dark. Nathan Cole arrived on a sway-backed mule. A sharp-featured journalist of 32 from Charleston's Gazette, his city Polish, ink-stained cuffs, wire-rimmed spectacles, and a skepticism honed on urban scams, clashing with the holler's raw edge. The anonymous letters, scrawled by R.H.O. in trembling script, had ensnared him. Tales of shadowed feasts, child bones strung like beads, a family bound to mountain devils. "Debunk the hillbilly curse or break the story," his editor barked. Nathan's satchel bulged with subterfuge, a leather notebook, stubby pencils, and a Kodak Brownie camera with glass plates for irrefutable proof. He dubbed himself Nate the Lumberjack, a debt-ridden orphan seeking board for brawn. The mountains hounded him from the first mile. Trails devolved to quagmire, boots caked to ankles, copperheads uncoiled from sun-warmed rocks with venomous hisses. Isolation amplified every snap of twig into ambush. By dusk, sweat-soaked and mule-lame, he crested the ridge to the Hannon cabin, evolved from shack to fortress, logs hewn tight as a stockade, windows barred with iron scavenged from derelict mines, chimney vomiting savory smoke that masked a faint, underlying copper tang. Ezekiel filled the doorway, shotgun casual against the jamb, his gray-streaked beard framing eyes narrow as flintlocks. "Stranger business here?" Nathan dismounted, spinning yarn smooth as silk. Mill closed in Logan, family dead of fever, willing to swing an axe for stew and straw. Lila materialized from shadows, ladle dripping, appraising him like fresh venison before jerking her chin. Set another plate. Integration seeped in like poison fog. The family, 6 children remaining, ages 14 to 27, moved with a fluid, predatory grace that set Nathan's teeth on edge. Caleb, the eldest, was an ox at 27, shoulders like sawn oak, perpetually honing blades to surgical keenness, his laugh a low rumble that didn't reach shadowed eyes. Mary, 22, bore eternally dilated pupils and scars latticing her forearms like ritual lightning. She hummed dissonant Cherokee dirges while skinning hairs, limbs too elongated, joints too supple for mere rabbits. The younger ones, silent wraiths named Silas, Eliza, and Jude, flitted like smoke, avoiding his gaze. Ruth was gone with a Welch boy. They shrugged, but her ghost haunted silences. Tommy's name drew knives from conversations. Nathan documented in fevered scrawl by stolen lantern hours. Nightly, the loft scratching evolved. No longer random, but paced rhythms like claws circling prey, laced with guttural murmurs that slithered through floorboards, half English, half syllables older than settlers. Eyes, too many, too luminous, glinted from tree-lined dusk. Meals brimmed unnatural, stews thick with unnameable game, mountain shares portioned at moonrise and borne into woods by Caleb. A ferocious storm mid-May uprooted ancient hemlocks, flooded the ravine to a churning cauldron. Hold up, Ezekiel passed pipe tobacco, corncob embers glowing. "This ground drinks blood for blessings, lad. None been here eternal, want their due or strip you to bones." Nathan's pulse thrummed. Metaphor or madness? He nodded, probing gently, filing every gravelly inflection. Midnight raids unveiled abyss. The root cellar, chilled earth pit reeking of wet stone and decay, concealed atrocities. Bundles of hides, supple as chamois but fingerprint-riddled. Bell jars of organs suspended in yellow brine, livers too small. Hearts veined blue, labelled in Ruth's looping hand, Fog Eater's Dew, Full Moon, 92. A vellum map, grease-stained, circled vanishings orbiting the cave. Dates, initials, arrows to tribute sites. Brownie flashes captured blurred horrors, pallid faces in gloom, elongated shadows mid-prowl. Adrenaline surging, Nathan palmed a necklace. 24 child molars on twisted sinew, warm as living tissue. Storm's apex crashed vengeance. Caleb materialized as Nathan ascended cellar rungs, scarred lips splitting in a grin too wide. "Snoopin' our treasures, lumberjack?" Family coalesced from gloom, Mary licking lips, young one's eyes fever bright, Ezekiel hefting the mantle idol, now veined cracks but quartz pulsing like heart fire. "Join the circle, or feed it whole." Nathan detonated into the maelstrom, boots hydroplaning on clay-slick ravine, lightning strobing pursuers, hulking silhouettes loping quadruped, howls threading gale. Fog cloaked him, root snagged ankle with crack, sprain fire, but momentum carried to Piney Grove's skirt. Dawn's gray mercy brought Sheriff Reed, posse lanterns blooming. Nathan raved half-delirious of flesh devourers, flashing necklace proof. As men murmured, a ululation knifed the mist, familial, feral, closing. Summer 1901 brought a sweltering vengeance to Black Hollow, the kind of heat that turned the hollers into steam baths and drove even the hardiest miners to curse the mountains that sustained them. A militia of 50, coal-blackened miners from Welch, deputies from Charleston, even a detachment of National Guard with Springfield rifles, encircled the valley under a sky choked with smoke from burning underbrush. Hounds bayed frantically against the unnatural mist that coiled like living smoke, defying the dog days blaze. Nathan Cole limped at the vanguard, ankles splinted, Ruth's blood-stained diary and blurred brownie plates clutched like holy relics. Sheriff Reed commanded the right flank, mustache twitching with grim resolve. "Burn the devil out!" he growled, torch in hand. The assault began at dawn, gunfire cracking like thunderclaps against the ravine's echo. The Hannon cabin stood defiant, a gutted fortress now, windows shattered, door ajar like a screaming mouth. Inside, the hearth lay cold, mantle bare save for obsidian shards from the shattered idol, quartz eyes dulled to milk glass. No family, no bodies, just an altar at the cabin's heart. Tommy's grinning skull wreathed in pokeberry-dyed wildflowers, child molars from Nathan's necklace arranged in ritual spiral. The miners' corpses from the October feast lay mummified nearby, arranged as macabre banquet, sinew-strung limbs posed mid-feast. Tracks, those same elongated claw marks, led to the forbidden cave, vanishing into an underground river that roared like judgment. The militia plunged in, lanterns bobbing, voices swallowed by darkness. Gunfire erupted from the depths. 2 guardsmen dragged out, throats rendered to red ruin, claw gouges weeping across chests. Like wolves, but bigger. One gasped before collapsing. Deeper still, Ezekiel's corpse hung impaled on stalactite roots, idol fragments clutched in rigor-stiff hands, face frozen in ecstatic rictus. Lila swung from a rafter in the loft, rosary tangled in her noose, eyes bulging toward the scratching source, empty now, but walls clawed to splinters. Caleb lay eviscerated at the river's edge, guts arranged in Cherokee symbols, feral grin intact. Mary and the young ones, vapor. Ruth, Nathan's reluctant guide, stared hollow-eyed at the carnage. "Told you it don't die clean," she whispered, scars pulsing blue beneath her skin. As militia torches illuminated petroglyphs afresh, now seeming to writhe, She bolted into shadow without word. Sheriff Reed nailed her parting gift to the cabin door. A scrap torn from the diary, ink still tacky. The curse don't end with us Hannons. It chooses new guardians when blood runs thin. Black Hollow remembers. Watch the fog. No signature, just a smeared handprint, too small for adult. Epilogue, 1910. Nathan's Gazette expose. Cannibals of the darkest Appalachians. Ignited brief scandal. Plates published grainy but damning.